Welcome to Friday 13 here in April 2025. Exciting, crazy week. Wow, lots of things happening.
Indeed. I wasn't sure you're going to turn the music off, though. We might just be talking through the music the whole time.
Man, I like that music. It's kind of cool. All right, let's just jump right into this crazy week, man. This is some important.
Is there breaking news this week? We were struggling for this one, weren't we?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, Trump tariffs sow fears of trade wars, recession, and a $2,300 iPhone. Wow. I may just have to resell my iPhone, man. That's my new business. Our iPhone arbitrage. Wow, Andy. Obviously, a lot of tariff news. The markets are going crazy. You know, it was down quite a bit yesterday. The stock market's down again today. China retaliated on some of these tariffs. What is going on here? What are you hearing, Andy?
Everything. I think the chessboard just got thrown up in the air, and nobody has any idea. In fact, I was reading an article this morning. Experts were saying there's no historical precedent here. Usually they can go back and look at some data and say, okay, when this happened, when we did this, when that policy was passed, when this event, this oil price shock, when this war broke out, there is nothing like this because this hasn't happened really since like the 1930s, and there's no historical data. So everybody is making it up, and it keeps changing in real time. And as we saw this morning, we had what happened yesterday. The market reacted. But then today, the Chinese put a 34% tariff on all American goods going into China. And so what's going to happen next? Are people going to lower their rates and decide that mutually assured destruction is over? Like, I guess the Israelis lowered their tariffs to 0, but we actually still now have a 70% tariff on them. So are we going to lower ours to 0 because theirs is 0? Or are we going to raise? Are they going to force to raise theirs? I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's got to settle down, and there'll be something that comes out of this. I think to some degree, it's leverage. It's a leverage play to some degree. But I know
only if countries respond to that and say, "Gosh," so, I mean, some of them have reached out and said, "Let's talk," but some have said, "Screw that.
Right.
We'll put tariffs on you." So it's going to be some mixed bag, and who knows?
Yeah, I know. But in the meantime, uncertainty is not great for business, but for the e-commerce, our e-commerce community, a lot of folks are, they're going to be looking for ways to grow the business. In fact, some ways it may benefit e-commerce because, people are going to be looking at what aren't we doing that we could be doing. I always say that what slows B2B down is the business is just good enough, right? And then we don't have to make change. Well, this is a big issue. So we'll keep our eyes on this, folks. Obviously we're not economists here, but we talk to a lot of B2B folks, and it's interesting to see how they're reacting. So we'll keep our finger on the pulse there. I was Andy. I was at the Industrial Supply Association conference this week in Nashville, Tennessee. And actually tariffs, of course, was one of the topics. But what's fascinating in terms of just market dynamics. So this is ISA is an industry association of manufacturers and distributors of industrial products, so cutting tools and building products and all kinds of different safety products, different things that are used in industrial applications. The major theme that emerged here was really consolidation of distribution. I heard from manufacturer, and I mostly met with manufacturer after manufacturer, that, hey, in 5-10 years there's going to be 5 distributors left because big companies like MSC are buying everybody, right? So you have it's changing the dynamic of the marketplace. And now these companies are more open than they've ever been about e-commerce, meaning I'm looking at doing my own e-commerce. I got to protect my flanks. I'm looking at deploying an Amazon program, more open than they ever have been, because they're recognizing finally that distribution is changing in front of them, and they have to have other avenues to market other than just big distribution. So it's fascinating to see that openness happening. I've been going to ISA now for about 3 years. So even over the last 2 years. And of course, things like tariffs and other major market changes are forcing these people to rethink and not just sit around and wait for the next 3% growth from their distribution channel, because that's not happening as much. So there's, they've got to be thinking differently and more strategically. And I'm seeing that come to life here. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I've heard this consolidation argument for years, and it's always been right around the corner. And companies the big have always been buying the small. I mean, this is the model that companies like Sonopar and Rexel use in the electrical distribution space. They always buy up regionals. They use economies of scale. But unless there's an inexhaustive supply of small distributors, there always seem to be more distributors. And it's not like people are starting small distributors, but I just think it's a very fragmented space. And even if the big guys were to buy up some of the smaller guys, there's still going to be plenty of smaller guys. But to your point, everybody needs to be able to pretend or kind of act like a large company. And many of them can do that by partnering with, marketplaces,
Sure.
uh, and, joining co-ops, like affiliated distributors, et
Right.
cetera.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways to accomplish this, because I always say on the internet, every website looks exactly the same. It's not like a multi-billion-dollar company's website looks any different. The storefront looks any different from a $5 million company. And
Right.
so, and when you're using AI and search, you just get sent someplace. And these companies that have all this, ostensibly volume that they can leverage, it's not always clear that actually helps them that much, except when it comes to pricing, because the bigger they are, the slower they are. And so, would you rather be a big
True.
company with lots of resources and economies of scale, or a small company that's nimble? Well, if you can be a small company, but also be able to leverage the economies of scale and be able to compete on price, that's a better arrangement than being a large company that's slow and plodding.
Yeah, no, that's really true. It's interesting. All the manufacturers also told me, and again, I was mostly meeting with manufacturers here. It was a consistent message that we don't come to the show to meet new distributors. We come to the show to meet with our existing distributors, because there aren't any new distributors here. I mean, and so anecdotally, I hear what you're saying, but anecdotally, listening to, and I met with, I don't know, 30 different manufacturers. They all said that. They all said that. So some's afoot here, Andy.
Well, the other thing is, a lot of this consolidation, final point, is due to the market dynamics, but it's also because a lot of these distributors are family-owned distributors,
Right.
and the management team, meaning the father or the grandfather, is retiring.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's that kind of thing going on
Yes.
as well. But I think the big one is, as you know really well, is Amazon. I think
Yeah.
Amazon is the one thing that is different here from the past. I
Mhm.
think Amazon does actually force a lot of these smaller distributors to think long and hard about how they can compete. Whereas before, there was
Yeah.
always this talk about they were competing with larger distributors. Now they're competing with Amazon, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's get to our topic. We haven't hit it yet. It's who is your next hire in B2B commerce? And this is a fascinating topic. We raised it at our summit, and we'll talk about the reaction in a minute. Here's just some stats to frame it up. 62% of B2B sellers see the lack of qualified e-commerce team members as a significant barrier to growth. That's our own research from our state of B2B e-commerce. At the same time, 63%, makes sense, are hiring. These are executives in our community are hiring to kind of fill some of those gaps. But the challenge, of course, Andy, is that, you know, talent is hard to find and retain, right? In 2024, 6 in 10 firms had to fire a recent college graduate. So we've got this gap, right? We've got firms hiring, but then they're also firing, right? So 60% there of recent college grads. So, it puts a real challenge in front of these firms, because these companies are all, trying to advance their digital commerce. So where do you hire? If it's hard to do, you're under pressure to deliver ROI like never before. Where do you hire? So there's a lot of different roles that are, necessary for success in B2B e-commerce. Everything from merchandising, and B2B companies go, what the heck is merchandising? Yeah, right. It's a concept from B2C. Like, you have to actually talk about your product in digital format and communicate it effectively. So if someone wants to buy it, it's your digital salesperson. Digital marketing, creative, fulfillment, you have operational side, inventory management, forecasting, site optimization, including analytics, content. Guess what's behind content? All this product data that's a mess. Technology obviously is a key, role or functional area. And then, of course, you've got third parties, providers, which can supply a lot of these roles that aren't necessarily internal. So, Andy, you have this huge, mess of things you could potentially hire for. How do executives, think about it? Do you anything you want to say or add here on these roles?
Oh gosh, I mean, this we only have 15 minutes for this, but we've been talking about this one for a while. There's the broader issue here is related to what we were just talking about, is
Hmm.
that is a generational shift taking place. So there's a bunch of different dynamics, right? There's a generational shift taking place. B2B is just not as sexy or attractive to younger talent as B2C is.
Right. Yep.
Um, the really talented people don't want to be pigeonholed in a particular space. And so, they might sell themselves to consulting firms or agencies, et cetera. So the
Right.
competition for talent is fierce. B2B companies struggle. Many of them don't have a precedent for these things. You mentioned merchandising. Think about this. Let's say you decide you need merchants. And so you put out a rec for that. You're a B2B company located in some, rural area. What are the chances that for a position you've never had any experience with, for a company nobody's ever heard of before, that's in an industry that doesn't really scream sexy, that you're going to
Right.
get really talented people for that? That's the starting point.
Hmm. Yep, exactly. So, right. So, again, talent's hard to, and then you have this layer of, when I think about where to hire, what are my priorities, right? And so, we asked, and we have data on what people's, from our community, what are their top priorities as it relates to their business. And so, and the layer here, which is interesting, is AI. So we'll talk about that in a second. But, what are the top priorities? Well, our community has told us analytics and reporting is number one. ROI of digital investments is number two, determining and managing and measuring that. Number three is customer experience, really digital customer experience. And number four is product data. Those are the top four. So if we think about those and the next hire, and then we have this layer of AI that says, hey, can none of these tasks be automated? Don't actually need a person. Interesting. Where do you think people are hiring, Andy? And we asked our summit audience this. What's your guess? What do you think people are hiring for?
I know the answer, so I shouldn't answer.
All right, we won't ask you then. Fine. So, well, here's what the summit people told us. What we heard. Data, number one. 41% of attendees at our summit, it's 100 people from across industries, all, e-commerce related. Data is number one. 41% of attendees are hiring for improvement and management of product data. Specifically, what they're hiring for is data engineering and enrichment, product information management, governance and administration, and AI and machine learning engineer. So that's a new one, right? That didn't exist a few years ago, really. So, it's just interesting to see this. The other notable areas were digital strategy development. And I think that comes into kind of that ROI question. Like, how do I align the organization? Where should I invest? And the other one was merchandising, which shocked the heck out of me because, again, I still don't think B2B understands what this is, right? Developing the
Yeah,
right content for a digital first approach.
yeah. I mean, what was merchandising in the sort of traditional B2B environment? It was a catalog with a
Right.
picture
Right.
and a description, a very brief description of the product that was then filtered through a sales rep who explained to you what this stuff was. That was merchandising. So there was no
Right.
sense for, a freestanding, digital version of any of that stuff. In fact, I know back in the early days, and for some companies they're still in the early days, they were taking the catalog, the print catalog, and then digitizing it and saying, this is our product catalog. When
Yep.
there's no interactive dimension, there's no searchability about a physical catalog. There's just all these problems with it. So they didn't reimagine how they were going to do this. And now they are, because not only have they realized that you can't just digitize a product catalog and it works in B2B, but
Mhm.
they also realize that B2C companies have very successfully developed merchandising functions. And now they're pointing to that going, we need that.
Right, exactly. Here's the other thing when you think about, all these really functions is AI is layering on top of these, and some of these roles may not even be necessary. So the follow-on question we should ask is how many of these roles do you think can be handled by AI and not people in the future, right? Love to get our community's opinion on that one. It's fascinating, Andy, because we also put up a poll on LinkedIn and we asked this question. And it was different than what we found at the summit, which is fascinating. We asked, what role are you hiring for next to support your digital commerce efforts? Number one was not analytics or data. It was analytics at 43%. I mean, it's related to data. but it's about analytics, right? And number two was product data management at 24%. Digital strategy was third at 19%. Merchandising was a distant fourth at 14%. It's interesting to me that, that analytics has crept up here. And we saw this in some of our other survey data as well. And I think that gets into our, the ROI arguments. How do I best communicate the success of my efforts? So I can see why it crept up, but we got this comment in from Dan Stepchew, who's a digital marketing leader at Zest Dental. He's been a guest here on Friday 15 in the past. He said, I'll bet if you had customer data instead of product data in the list of options, you'd see more votes for the data higher, right? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think it's also fair to say that analytics and data are highly interrelated. In
Sure.
fact, inseparable in many ways. And so Dan's point's a good one. That what do you mean by data? But to me,
Right.
analytics is just the front end of the data argument. What you're looking for from analytics is insights from what? The data.
From the
And
data, right.
so when you say we need analytics help, you
Mhm.
really are saying we need help with our data because we're not going to get any insights out of bad data, no matter how good the analytics engine is.
Oh, the day's coming where I can just go to ChatGPT and say, what should I do? And it will tell me.
And we
Right.
used to joke about that, and now it's a serious thing, and we'll be talking about that more in the future. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a joke anymore. It's a real thing where you can have AI actually make recommendations about this stuff. Now they can't fix all the data. There are some efforts underway to do that, but if your core data is a mess, again, it doesn't matter how great your analytics tools are. You
Right.
got it. That's why the biggest issue right now in B2B, and has been for years and will be for more years, is the data issue. And it's been a problem in B2C. You know this well. B2C had this problem years ago. They have, quote unquote, I don't want to say solved it, but they've thought differently about it. I think B2B needs to reimagine how they think about data. Too
Yeah.
many of them, and we said this before, think about data as a cost center, like it's a problem.
Right.
And instead of thinking about it as, wait a minute, this is a core differentiator. We could be mining this data to develop insights to help us sell more effectively. That train of thought is still a bit foreign in B2B, sadly.
Yet again, pilling B2C best practices for B2B. Some people say, hey, there's not a clear parallel there, but I don't agree. I mean, there's a lot of parallels there. There's some obviously difference with B2B, no question, but I mean, it's just further down the path, consumer side. So, all right, we're almost at Friday 20 here, Andy. A couple quick announcements. Master B2B Nexus, we launched it last month. We now have a number of members in this program, and we're getting more interest every day here. This is it's really your personal B2B digital lifeline. So if you think about, it's designed for B2B executives. So if you're a director or higher in your organization and you're involved in managing digital transformation and e-commerce for your business, this is, think about it like almost like a service from one of the large research houses, but it's really delivered by peers and people who have advice for you, that have been in the trenches. Very practical stuff. It's all focused on B2B e-commerce. This is only about really that, and we have having exclusive discussions. You get a personal concierge to answer your questions quickly. Hey, I need a piece of data on this, or hey, I need to know how much I should spend on this software. Things like that. That's what this is designed for. So I encourage you to check it out. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and Nexus is right listed at the top there. We also have our forum, which is available to members of, if you're a practitioner at a manufacturer, distributor, or brand, you can sign up. There's no cost. Go to our website, and there it's, again, only practitioners in the forum. It's free, and we have hundreds and hundreds of folks in there now interacting every day on topics and networking as well. We have a number of roundtables coming up. Cleveland and Cincinnati. Andy, you're there next week. 2 weeks later after that, or 1 week after that, we're in Charlotte, but also Minneapolis, New York City, Los Angeles. All, again, complimentary for practitioners. Go to our website and look for future events. You can see a list of those. And finally, I want to remind everyone that our Friday 15 is available in podcast form on your favorite podcast service. You're probably listening to it on podcast right now, if I had to guess. Spotify, YouTube, our website, Google, Apple, all over the place, all over the galaxy. And please give us a rating and review. We'd be very, very, very appreciative. All right, Andy, any final words on our Friday? Oh, gosh, 20 plus here?
Well, one thing I think we'll be talking about for the next several weeks at our roundtables and also events we're going to that nobody anticipated is the T word, tariffs.
Oh yeah, a lot. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned on more tariff talk. Maybe we'll just rename this tariff talk. I don't think so. We don't spend all day on it. All right, guys. Well, thanks. We'll see you all next week on our next Friday 15. Thanks for joining today.